Hi everyone. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wow, today is so complicated with all these phones, ice cream, and tires. Especially tires. Boy, do I hate tires. Wouldn't it be nice to go back to a simpler time, when vaccines were basically just heroin, when people were strictly divided by social class, and women had basically no rights? Wouldn't it be so cool to live in the Victorian era? Well, you'd, my friend, would be wrong. Let's go back and see what the Victorian era was really all about. Why do you have a top hat? Because we're in Victorian England. You can't just walk around without a top hat like a peasant. Hey, why don't I have a top hat then? Because you are a peasant. Oh, you thought you were going to be playing croquet with the Queen? No, you're the working class. Get ready for tireless work and a life expectancy of 20. Well, where do I work? The factory, of course. Look, time for you to get to work. Just kidding. What's wrong with this picture? That's right, you're too old. Thanks to the Industrial Revolution, there are machines that make fabrics better and faster for the upper class. But these machines need tiny hands, so the workforce consists of children as young as 5. Look, there's your friend Timmy working on one now. Yeah, that just happened. Now time for you to get to work. You expect me to get on that machine after that? Yep, now in you go. No, I'm not working at the factory. I quit. That's okay. There are plenty of other jobs you can have. Why do I need a job? I'm only 5. Because, my dear friend, the gears of a good economy are lubricated by the blood of the innocent. Now, if you don't want to work in the factory, that's okay. You can work in the mines. The coal mines. Because the upper class are human pieces of garbage, your life is pretty much valued at less than a penny, so these owners invest in basically zero safety procedures. It's important to mention that the upper class wasn't evil. They were simply doing the social standard of the era. But whatever, we're still going to paint them as the bad guys, because we always need a bad guy. Back to the mine shafts. So most miners had a life expectancy of 20 to 22 years, due to coal dust-induced lung problems and random cave-ins. Children were often a victim of these, as it was their job to push carts down narrow tunnels where adults couldn't reach. Now, I'm not sure about you guys, but I think we can all agree, a 10-year-old having a midlife crisis shouldn't be a goal our society is reaching for. Now, there were a lot more undesirable jobs that aren't as well known. We have chimney sweeps, who were often children. This job often led to black lung and reports of sliding down the chimney and getting stuck. And some people actually died of suffocation because they were stuck too long. Now, I don't mean to judge, but that's a pretty embarrassing way to die. Imagine you've been a chimney sweep your whole life, and one day you just step wrong and get stuck. There's no one to pull you out, and so your final hours are just sitting in an awkward position while soot slowly fills your lungs. All in the meantime, there are 2 uppity rich people just sitting in their lavish houses going, "Huh, Richard, I wonder if the chimney sweep's done." Then, a few days later, your half-cooked, soot-covered body falls, interrupting a dinner party. Tangent aside, that's probably the best job on our list. One job on the weirder side were the leech collectors. You know those things that grab onto you and never let go? That slowly suck away your life force until you're nothing but a bag of empty dreams? Haha, no, not those. These. Now, I know these vampire worms look disgusting, but people in Victorian England thought they were very helpful. Leeches were used in many medical practices. Now, I'm not sure about you, but if I went to the doctor and they prescribed me 3 bottles of Twilight caterpillars, I'd be a bit skeptical. But that wasn't even the worst part. The collection process was arguably worse than the use, as it required somebody, typically a lower-class woman, to go into a muddy bog, most likely polluted, with the hopes of attracting some of these Dracula maggots. Now, I don't think I have to say this, but intentionally searching for blood-sucking parasites isn't a good idea. This would invite all sorts of infections, not to mention the blood loss. So the next time you see one of these little blood slugs, remember, it used to be someone's job to let them bite them. Some other notable occupations were rat catchers, which is pretty self-explanatory. Mudlarks and toshers were peasants who would go to polluted rivers such as the Thames and sift through the sewage for pawnable items. So after a long day of sifting through urine, feces, and the like, they would come home with a necklace or two. Mind you, said necklace would also be covered in urine and feces. And so would they. I should mention that the smell that polluted the cities was downright horrid, and sewage was basically everywhere. So some people made a career out of it. I present the Pure Finder. These were typically lower-class teens or women that lived in the slums who collected dog feces on the ground and sold it to leather merchants. Their entire life consisted of searching for dog dookie, and not just a little bit. They would collect it by the bucketful. And it's not like dog poop was the only poop on the ground. There was plenty of horses and humans who decided to empty their bowels on the street. So they were probably picking up human poop too. Some Pure Finders went, what the heck, if I'm going to be picking up other people's waste, might as well go to the source. And they'd spend all day in the sewers picking up the world's worst fudge by the bucket. Most people didn't even wear gloves when collecting, leading to a lot of sickness. So this job wasn't just gross, it was dangerous too. Another job reserved for the lower class was matchmakers. Not that kind of matchmaker. They spent all day making literal matches, which consisted of splintering wood into small chunks, then dipping the ends in phosphorus. I'm not sure if you know about phosphorus, but it's pretty dangerous. Like, flammability aside, this chemical violates the Geneva Convention in the way it destroys biological material. The worst and most common of these would be phossy jaw. Here's a quick diagram. Yep, sometimes they would just kinda fall off. Not to mention, most of these were 12 to 16-year-old girls, and because there's no breaks, most of the time sprinkles of jaw remover would fall into their food when eating. Chemical warfare aside, you may be thinking, with all these dangerous jobs, isn't everyone dead? Well, actually, there were some specific jobs about death. Nice segue, Cash. Thanks, Cash. It's hard to believe, with all that we've covered, that the Victorian era was actually a time of rising technology. But the truth is, many of the foundations of science were discovered during the late 1800s. As science expanded, anatomy was a point of interest, and cadavers were surprisingly difficult to acquire, at least legally. So if you wanted to find a body to cut into to get out all those ooey-gooeys, you'd have to go through a less legal route. I present the Resurrectionist. No, they weren't trying to raise the dead. At least in that way. What they would do is they would scope out newly buried bodies, and when night fell, they would dig them up and sell them to scientists in need. We are gathered here today to remember the life of Frederick Worcester. Look, Jimmy, a fresh one. We're going to be making bank tonight. Now, the last job we will cover is the funeral mute. These were children who dressed in all black and weren't allowed to talk. Their purpose was to stand in front of the house of the recently deceased silently. It was also their job to lead the coffin to the family cemetery. Now, I don't know how this was a widespread social occurrence, but I'd love to see what was going through the guy's head who invented this. Oh, Richard, Charles has died. Oh, what a pity. Well, now I must find a disabled child. What? You know, just get a kid to dress in black and kinda stand in front of his house? Why does he have to be disabled? Well, I can't have him just chittin' and chatting with everybody who passes by. What the hell, Richard? Fine, he doesn't have to be mute, but I swear if he starts talking to me, I'm gonna lose it. So, if you're lucky enough to survive mutilation by factory machine, collapsing mine shafts, getting stuck in chimneys, eaten by leeches, catching rats, sifting through sewage, collecting sewage, consuming phosphorus, digging graves, and posing as a child with a disability, you get to live in a small apartment in the slums with your wife and 8 children, all at the prime age of 19.